No, election fraud, pure and simple. That from the prosecution, as Donald Trump was accused of trying to illegally influence the 2016 presidential election by preventing damaging stories about his personal life from becoming public. It is then the start of the former president's historic hush money trial. Trump accused of a planned, long-running conspiracy to help get himself elected through illegal expenditures to silence people who had something bad to say about his behaviour. Well, let's talk about exactly what's happened in court so far. International Affairs editor Kethevane Gorjestani is with me here on set. Kethevane, we've seen just the opening arguments at the moment in the former US president's trial. Gave us a bit of a glimpse, though, didn't it, about how things are likely to play out in the coming weeks. What case, first of all, is the prosecution seeming to be making against him?
Well, what the prosecution is trying to do is to show that by falsifying these business records, Donald Trump didn't just try to kill negative stories about himself, but that the scheme amounted to possibly an attempt to corrupt the 2020 election. One of the prosecutors saying no politician wants bad press, but this was a planned, coordinated, and long-running conspiracy to influence the 2014 election. So the focus here is to try to make it more about the election interference rather than the falsifying of the business records. That's what they're trying to do, to tie these two crimes together, the falsifying of the business records and the covering up of an election law violation. Whether the jury accepts that connection is going to be key for the prosecution. The other big key, and what they're trying to do right now, is that the jury believes their star witness, Michael Cohen. He was the former lawyer for Donald Trump at the time, also his fixer. He's the middleman, really. He's the one who got that money and then allegedly paid that adult film star Stormy Daniels to keep silent. And he is a flawed character, a flawed witness. And so you're going to see the prosecution try to explain that, yes, he is flawed, but he also has a first-hand account about what they're trying to show. And so those are going to be the two main elements. Convince the jury that this is about way more than just hush money, and convince them that this flawed witness is actually key.
Did we get any kind of idea or sense of what the defense is going to be for Donald Trump?
They're going to do exactly the opposite. For them, it's about trying to show that he was not really trying to influence the election. He was simply trying to protect his family, trying to protect his name, his brand, and also that the very point of a political campaign is to, in a way, influence the election in the sense of influencing how voters see you. And so that's what one of the defense lawyers actually said. He said that, yes, it is influencing an election. It's called democracy. So that's going to be their strategy, their argument. They're also going to try to show that, yes, there were legal expenses paid because Michael Cohen was indeed the lawyer at the time. So they are going to try to make this about a hush money case, not an election interference. And you saw this in the rhetoric. The defense team calling Donald Trump President Trump throughout, and the prosecution calling him the defendant. Of course, this is what's happening in court, but Donald Trump is also using this outside of court, using his court appearances a little bit like small campaign events, and trying to make this about a broader problem, he says, which is that the Democrats are out to get him, and that in his eyes, that is the political and the election interference.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how it's going to play out, isn't it? Let's not forget, this case that we're talking about here is one of several others as well. What else is there? How could they affect Donald Trump's potential return to the White House?
Well, the New York case is one of 4 major criminal cases for Donald Trump. There is, of course, the federal 2020 election interference case. That's about Donald Trump's alleged involvement in and around January 6th. Then there is the Georgia 2020 election interference case. That's about his alleged attempt to overturn the results in that state. And finally, you have the classified documents case. Now, according to all legal experts, the New York case seems to be like the least serious one if you see the list of these criminal trials. But it is significant in the sense that, first of all, it's the first one. And second of all, it's very likely going to be the only one where we might get a verdict before the November 5th election. And that is, of course, very important. Why is it important? A guilty verdict for Donald Trump doesn't mean he can't run, doesn't mean he can't win, and doesn't mean that he can't take office. However, if you look at the polls among independents, about half of independents and then about a quarter of Republicans say that if Donald Trump were convicted of a crime, that would make them change and that would make them not vote for Donald Trump. So that could be a problem for Donald Trump. That said, Donald Trump, as I said, is using these criminal trials for his campaign. He's going to spend 4 days a week in the New York courthouse, but the rest of the time he's going to be campaigning and he's going to be using this. Look at me. I'm a political victim. The Democrats are out to get me. They're out to get you. And so far, at least for his base, that has worked wonders, both in the polls and for his fundraising. And we know that in U.S. politics, fundraising is also a big, big part.